let's move on to the trigger assembly. Okay, to take it apart, you need a small slotted screwdriver, which again, the cheap 4-way screwdriver is a good fit. So you just take these two screws out. Okay, and lift the cover off. Alright, the safety popped out, but that's no big deal. So this is the sear. This is the sear spring. And the sear spring is also what retains the safety in place. Alright, now, one of the modifications I read about to improve the trigger pull of these is on the nose of the trigger where it contacts the sear. You were supposed to take a Dremel or something and cut back this area back here where only the nose of it contacts, because if it contacted back here, which apparently some of the earlier ones did, it made the trigger pull atrocious. Okay, so, but this one, made in 2014, it's already like that from the factory, so it has a pretty decent trigger. Now, if you look up here at this portion of the trigger, now what that does is, that is the bolt safety interlock that I was talking about earlier. So what I'm going to do is just cut it off right there, and that will eliminate that, and that will do two things for me. It will allow me to decock it while it's pumped up and has a pellet in it, or while it's pumped up, you know, period. Anyway, I can pump it up, put a pellet in it, and then decock the hammer, and which you can't do, you know, as long as this is in here. And the other thing is this spring back here. All that does is adds to the trigger pull, because the sear spring exerts pressure on the nose of this all the time anyway. So I've heard of people putting a lighter spring in there, but I've noticed that if you take that spring out altogether, it still works. I actually thought about cutting this off because it rubs down here, but then looking further, I realized that that's actually what engages the safety, so we can't remove that. If we did, we would have to do something different for our safety, and so we're not going to do that. Now, one thing that you can do, I'm not going to do it right now, but once you take that spring out, you can actually epoxy a nut into that and run a screw through, you know, take a Dremel and open that up a little bit on both sides, or put the two halves together and drill into it, or whatever, but epoxy a nut into that and put a screw in there so that you can adjust it as an over travel stop. And also, I think it would be good to make up some kind of arrangement, and I'm not sure the best way to do it yet, but make up some kind of arrangement that will preload it and take up some of the slack. and that could be done probably via a screw right in here, but I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But what I am going to do though is cut this off and maybe polish this and these two surfaces a little bit, but you know, without actually removing any metal. So that should make it a bit smoother. Okay, so I cut the bolt safety interlock off the trigger. I also polished the sear mating surfaces with a felt bob on my Dremel. Now, I cut that off on my bandsaw, but you can do it with a cutoff wheel on a Dremel too. Make sure that it doesn't get too hot. It cuts easily, so it's not hardened. That nose may be hardened, but the trigger as a whole is not. It seems to be mild steel. So when you put it back together, grease it up. Mine wasn't greased, but it's about to be. That goes a long way toward improving the feel of the trigger. Now, one thing I didn't mention, and I will now. I was thinking about it earlier and I forgot about it. But don't forget, you heard it here. But if you are interested in having an air conserving pumper, if you do this mod of cutting the interlock off, that gives you the ability, because see, it rides. Hang on a second. See, that piece rides up in there, up in this area behind the hammer spring. And if you want to make an air conserving pumper, you need to make a power adjuster, which means you'll need to have something threaded in here, and the best way to do it is to epoxy a nut into there and put a screw in, drill this out, and or I don't know, probably drill it out, but smaller diameter than the seat here. It's got a spring seat, so you need the screw to bear on that spring seat. See, it sits in like that. So you epoxy a nut into there, drill a hole in the back, and have a screw that goes through here so that it can push against the spring, and then you just use a lighter spring or cut a few coils off this one or something. But the best way to do it is to use a spring that is as long but lighter, and that way then you have a screw that will exert pressure on it, so you can back it off and have it really light so that it will retain air above, say, 3 pumps, and at that point, you know, you can pump it up to your maximum number of pumps that you feel safe with, and still have the, you know, adjust it down to the performance that you would have with 3 or 4 pumps, and get 2 or 3 shots per charging, or, you know, pump it up 8 pumps or whatever, and then shoot it once and pump it 2 strokes and shoot it again, pump it 2 more strokes, or something like that, you know, air conserving pumper. And having a power adjuster really helps you to be able to do that. And you can't have a power adjuster unless you do this mod, so that allows you to do that. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. And the other, of course, is that I wanted to be able to decock it when it's loaded. So that's done. And see, it still works. And we're going to leave this spring out. So that's all we've got to do. And then just put this back together. Put this back on and replace those 2 screws, and we'll be good to go. The trigger mod is a success. It's not pumped, I just now checked it. Not pumped and no pellet in the chamber. The trigger is smoother and lighter. Now, I did not put an over travel stop in it, nor did I put a preload adjustment in it. And I would like to do both of those things, and I figured out how to do both of them. I demonstrated how to do the over travel stop, but I have a good idea, a better idea than what I was thinking before on how to do the preload as well. So I'll probably do those eventually, but for now it's better than it was. And it wasn't terrible, you know, but it's better now. And this was the main point of the mod. I can now decock it, see? Just like I can with my older Sheridans. Cock it, pump it up, decock it. Now, I also worked on the valve some more, and it works and shoots now again. But I mean, it always has, you know. There's never been an instance where it would not shoot when I had it put together. But I've decided that unscrewing the valve to eliminate headspace is not the way to go. I saw that mod somewhere. I've tried it a couple of times, and it really doesn't work very well. And yes, I could put some kind of thread sealant on the threads between the 2 halves of the valve, but really it'll be better to just put an adjustable piston in it. So that's what possum living is about. You know, if there's a way to do something more cheaply than the normal way of doing it, or for free preferably, then I'm going to show you. But if I try it and it doesn't work out, I'll show you that too. And in this case, yes, it is possible, but it's not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is just to put an adjustable piston in it, just like the older Benjamins and Sheridans had. So stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.